So, how many times have you been in a situation with your storytelling where you've had to manually collect information and continue to update it in multiple places? This happens quite frequently in communications and fundraising programs, and in my opinion, it's a major inefficiency. So, today I'm going to share a simple way you can automate the task of adding stories from your story collection form to your nonprofit's story bank or story library. Before we get started, my name is Vanessa Chase Lokshin, and I'm the president of the Storytelling Nonprofit, a consulting and training company that's dedicated to helping organizations raise more money and awareness through storytelling. And you're watching one of our quick tutorials to help you check more off your to-do list. So today, you're going to need 3 tools open, and these are all free tools that you can use. You don't need to have a paid account for any of them. Those 3 tools are, and I'm just going to show you them here on my screen, is first a Google Story collection form, or I should say just a Google form that we repurposed into a story collection form. And if you don't have this, there's a tutorial just below to help you set this up. You'll also need your Trello board for a story bank. And again, if you don't have this set up, there's a link to a tutorial just below to help you set this up for yourself. And the last thing you'll need is a Zapier account, Zapier. This is essentially a tool that allows any 2 softwares or applications to talk to each other. So this is where the automation of bringing information from one place to another place comes into play and helps us do this. So this is a fairly straightforward tutorial, but it does require a lot of steps. So feel free to pause this video as you go if you need to catch up or do a couple of things on your end as well. So the first thing I'd encourage you to do is pull up your story collection form, and this is the first step in this process. So if you go to, there's 2 tabs here, so there's questions and then responses. If you go over to responses, you'll see obviously there's summaries and you can see the individual responses, which is great. But what you want to do is actually put all of this data into a Google Sheet. So if you don't have that already, you can click this little green icon right here. I've already set this up for this particular form. So you can see it here. It says this, it has the same form name. So you can quickly find it, and then it always has responses in brackets. And so this is where all the information will just come in, and you'll then see it appear in the spreadsheet. So what we're going to do is basically pull the information that gets added to the spreadsheet and then put it over here in our leads and ideas in our story bank. All right, you ready to do this? So I'm going to show you how we're going to pull all this together. So go into your Zapier account, and what you're going to do is want to click Make a Zap. So this is where we're going to start. I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do all of this. All right, so it'll pull up a dashboard here, which will help you start a brand new Zap. Mine's taking a second to load, which is okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to name our Zap. So I'm going to go ahead and name mine. We're just going to say Zap for story form. The computer seems to be a little slow today, and that's all right. So it'll show up there in just a second, Zap for story form. Perfect. So what you're going to do is we need to set up a trigger and then an action step. So it's going to say what's going to trigger it and then what it's going to do because of a specific trigger. So in our case, the trigger is a new row being added to our story collection form Excel spreadsheet. And the action is to then add it into our Trello story bank. So hopefully you can see that from a big picture standpoint. So what we're going to do is go ahead and choose the app. So we're going to say Google Sheets, and it showed up right at the top. Oh, there we go. So you want to go ahead and select Google Sheets. That's step number 1. And then there's going to be a couple of options to help us both identify the right sheet and get everything set up correctly in our Zap. All right, so we're going to say when a new spreadsheet row is added. So that's exactly what we want to have happen, and we'll click Save and Continue. All right, and then next it's going to ask us to connect our accounts. So if you haven't done this before, it's a really easy step in this process. I'll just ask you to verify that this is your account, and so you can just click Save and Continue. If you don't have this added in, it'll ask you to connect your Google Sheets account, so you can just add in your contact information and it will then automatically connect Zapier to your Google Sheets or Google Drive account, I should say. All right, so once you've got your account connected, it's now going to ask us what spreadsheet it wants us to use. So I know the name of the spreadsheet, which is definitely the most helpful thing to do. So you can then see everything in the list. So story collection form number 2, responses is the name. And in our case, we only have one worksheet. So we're just going to select the one worksheet for that. There we go. I think it's form responses 1. Yes. All right, so there we go. So we've selected the right spreadsheet and the right worksheet in that spreadsheet, both very important steps. So we're going to click continue. And next what it will do is just give us a sample to make sure it's working correctly. Okay, we'll click fetch and continue. We're almost done with this first step. And then we'll go to the second step, which is pretty easy as well. All right, so then we hit continue, which is great. So we've got this done. So this was the first step in our process. So now it's going to ask us to choose an action. So we've got our trigger set up, and now we got to set up our action. So as I said, we're using our Trello storyboard. So we're going to go search for Trello, and it shows up, which is great. So we're going to select that. And then it's going to ask us, what do you want to do? So let's go look at our Trello board for a second. So we've got our story bank set up, and maybe you have yours set up slightly differently. And if you'd like to set it up the same way, feel free to check out the tutorial on that below. So I know what I want to have happen is I want to add a new card, which is basically what all of these individual things are, to this list, story, leads, and ideas. Great. So we have high degree of clarity on that. So we want it to create a new card. Great. So we're going to go ahead and select that. And then there's an option to find the board. Oh no, just create the card. There we go. So we're just going to click create card and then hit continue. And it's going to ask us to integrate our account between Trello and Zapier, which again, you'll just need to add in your login information to Trello so that Zapier can talk to it. Now I've already done that, so you just click continue. And then it's going to ask us to set up what's happening here. So what we're going to do is choose the board. So we're going to go ahead and search for the board. So it is my story bank. So you can search it. I always find that's the easiest thing to do. So I select that. And then it's going to say, what card do you want your board to be on? So again, we look back at our Trello board. It was under my story, leads, and ideas. So we'll select that one, the first one there. And then it's going to ask us to name the card. So what we can do is actually choose a field from our spreadsheet. So I want the name of the card to be the name of the person who submitted the story idea. So I'm going to select that. And then description. So this is where you're going to want to add some additional information. So I'm just going to scroll down here. It's a little bit easier to see. So I want the person's email address on the card. And then I also want their story details. So the field that says your story, which is what it says on my form, and maybe yours is different. What you'll see happen here is basically all of the fields from your form will show up, and you can select those to put those that make sense into your card. So for me, it makes sense to have the email address, the person's contact information, and then the story that they actually submitted. I want that on the card as well. And then for labels, you can choose to give a label if you want to highlight this card so you make sure you see it. You can create a custom label. There's an option to figure out what position you want the card to be in. I usually add it to the bottom of my list since it's newer. And then there's also things you can do. You can add a team member to the card. You can add a due date. There's lots of options here. These are customizations. I'm not going to use any of these because I think for our purposes of just getting this set up, we don't necessarily need that. But if there's something useful that you would like to add, by all means, feel free to add it. I would say one thing I would consider adding is a checklist to each card. So maybe just that was like a short to-do list of like following up, maybe doing an interview and writing the story or something like that. There would be some short checklist options there to help us move forward with pursuing and collecting that story. So once you've got your options set up, and again, you don't have to use all of these. There's many that are optional, and if it's too overwhelming, just feel free to skip to the bottom and hit continue. This is where we're going to get our card set up and make sure it looks the way we want it to so that it goes into Trello correctly. So this is what the sample looks like. So this is where you can verify the information. So the board, my story bank, list, story leads and ideas. The name of the card is the name of the person, and then description is the contact information, and then their sample story. Great, so that was all that we wanted on our card. So then we can go down here and click Test to Trello, which is where it's just going to verify that it's working properly. All right, and it gave us the green light up top to say it worked, which is great. So then all we need to do is click Finish. And that's that. So there are many steps in this process to getting this set up, and the last one is actually turning your Zap on, which this will be the option, the last option you get when you finish setting up a new Zap. But this is a really helpful tool, I find, especially if you've got lots of documents and things going on in your work. You may want to set something like this up just to help you automate getting information from one place to the next. And there are many other ways that you can use Zapier and all of these other tech tools that you may have to centralize your information and streamline everything in the process. I hope you found this tutorial really helpful. I know it's a really easy tech tutorial that you can implement with your organization. If you're looking for more great advice on storytelling, be sure to check out the other tutorials on our YouTube channel. I'm including links to the one to set up your own story form using Google Forms and how to set up your Trello bank, your Trello story bank. And of course, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content and tutorials each and every week.